Good day, everybody. Welcome to the TMU Democracy Forum, to the dais, and to Toronto Metropolitan University. My name is Karim Bardisi, Executive Director of the dais at TMU, policy and leadership think tank working on the key challenges and opportunities to make Canada a more prosperous country with more shared citizenship. And I'm delighted to introduce the Provost of Toronto Metropolitan University, Roberta Iannacito Provenzano, who will say a few words.
Thank you very much, Karim. Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to the Democracy Forum hosted by our dais. Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge the history of the land that we are on. I don't like staples, but here we are. This acknowledgement is a place to begin our thinking about truth and reconciliation, and I encourage everyone to consider the relationship to the land and Indigenous peoples. Toronto is in the dish with one spoon territory. The dish with one spoon is a treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. Subsequent Indigenous nations and peoples, Europeans, and all newcomers have been invited into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. As we gather today, let us continue to carry forward our commitment to honoring reconciliation, decolonization, and Indigenous ways of knowing, being, and doing in all our endeavors. Thank you again for being here. As many of you know, the Democracy Forum is a nonpartisan platform for politicians and practitioners to engage in dialogue and increase democratic engagement. At TMU, we've had the pleasure of hosting leaders and MPPs from across the NDP, Liberal, Progressive, Conservative, and Green parties to discuss public policy and politics. As an institution, TMU believes in fostering dialogue and debate, as our teaching, learning, and research are driven by the diversity of ideas and experiences of our community. Today's event is led by Regg Cohn, a political columnist at the Toronto Star. I feel like he doesn't need an introduction, covering Queen's Park. Founder of the Democracy Forum at TMU, Martin is a senior fellow at the dais at TMU and a senior fellow at the Munk School of Global Affairs and Public Policy at U of T. He was also a foreign correspondent for 11 years in Asia and the Middle East, and was also a parliamentary correspondent. Unfortunately, I can't stay for this afternoon's discussion. I'll stay for a bit, but I'm sure that it will be engaging and enlightening, and I'm sure that you'll all enjoy it. So over to you, Martin.
Thank you. Thank you, Provost, for coming, and don't forget to vote, even if you have to leave. Thank you. Bienvenue, bonjour. Welcome to our 38th Democracy Forum at Toronto Metropolitan University, where we try to do democracy differently and more democratically. We launched our first Democracy Forum in 2018, just before the election. We had all four party leaders, major party leaders, on stage together talking about democratic engagement. Now, we've asked all the party leaders to do the same thing today, or this week, this campaign. And the Progressive Conservative leader, Doug Ford, who is running to be re-elected as Premier, has declined. He doesn't believe that a democracy forum is best held during an election. The good news, however, the show must go on in a democracy, and the good news is that all the other major party leaders are all in. So we had the Liberal leader, Bonnie Crombie, yesterday. We have Mike Schreiner, the Green Party leader, coming next week. And today, we have the leader of the Ontario New Democratic Party, not Bonnie Crombie, Marit Stiles.
Yes.
So many leaders in so many days. So let me tell you a bit about our guest. Marit Stiles has been the NDP leader since 2023, 2 years ago this week, I think.
That's right.
She's the MPP for Davenport Riding since 2018, and she was first elected as a school trustee in 2014. Now, before politics, she was a national director at ACTRA, the Actors Union, for a decade. And before that, her life was politics. She was a political aide for the NDP, and many years later served as president of the federal NDP, and that's how you came to the Democracy Forum the first time, I think, in 2018. Right. You've forgotten already, but thank you for coming back. Now, she was born in St. John's, Newfoundland, where she attended Memorial University, moved to Ontario, and attended Carleton University, where she got her BA in political science, so politics all the time. A couple of fun facts about the leader.
Oh boy.
I read this on Wikipedia, so it must be true. And because you were a little bit late, I didn't have time to double check to fact check this, so you can catch me out.
Let's see how good you're.
But I read that Marit is a Norwegian name, but she's not of Norwegian descent.
True. Yes.
Yeah, you probably wrote the Wikipedia entry.
I did not, but thank you. Yes, somebody good did.
Her parents just borrowed the name from Norwegian friends.
Yes, that's true.
I did the same thing with my daughters who have Persian names. I just stole the name from an Iranian friend. Her parents were immigrants from America. True?
True.
So you could say that the leader is of American descent, which is a reminder that we're all very interconnected in these troubled times. So welcome back to the Democracy Forum at TMU.
Thank you.
Let's get into it.
Yeah.
Let me just remind everyone, though, that first a bit of housekeeping, that when you signed up for this event and when you registered again, you agreed to abide by the Code of Conduct. So everyone here gets to ask a question, but you got to let our guest answer the question. That's how we roll here. There's no microphones today, so we're using the Slido app. It's very democratic. We love it. There are QR codes over there that you can use your phone to register. Let's see. I will kick off the questions, and we will then open it up to the audience. So start thinking up your questions now. I'd like to remind people it's not a news conference. It's not a confrontation. It's a chance to ask more in-depth questions and ask our guests for more in-depth answers, especially in an election when people are looking for answers. Okay, so last week, Doug Ford triggered an election by saying publicly that we needed to deal with Donald Trump, and he needed a massive election mandate. This week, we heard him admitting privately, because of an open mic, that he was rooting for Mr. Trump 100% all the way. So what does this tell us about Ford's judgment if he was rooting for a confirmed election denier, a January 6th denier, and a tariff promoter? What does this tell us about Doug Ford's character?
Well, I think we know Doug Ford's character, and I think we knew it before the hot mic moment. It didn't surprise me that he was supporting Donald Trump. But I know it did surprise a lot of people, and I think that's because there's many things about Donald Trump that I think many Canadians would have an issue with, but most prominently is that Donald Trump had made it very clear even before he was elected president for the second time that he was coming after Canada. And so to me, the idea that he would still, in light of that, support somebody like Donald Trump says a lot about Doug Ford. But I want to say as well, this is not inconsistent as well. We've seen Doug Ford go up in front of a microphone and say one thing to the people of Ontario, and then turn around and say another thing.
So is this a blunder that will change the campaign? Is this a one-day wonder or a game changer for you?
I think, look, I mean, elections matter, and what happens at a campaign matters. So we'll see. But I do think that it speaks again to Doug Ford's character. It speaks to what he is, whether you can trust him. And I think that's a big issue for a lot of Ontarians right now, whether you can trust Doug Ford. After 7 years, we have seen what he has done. We have seen the deals that he makes, how they benefit his friends, his insiders, and often and almost always to the detriment of Ontarians. And so I think that this is just yet again evidence that confirms what we already know about Doug Ford, that he's in it just for his job, not for everybody else.
You could argue that his comments are confirmation that this election was never really about Donald Trump and the Americans and the tariff threat. So what is this election really about, and what do you want to make it about?
Well, I agree with you. I think that, look, last week, Doug Ford, he quit his job. He quit his job as premier. And he did that at a time when, arguably, we need leadership, right? So that tells you a lot right there. So we are now in an election campaign, and I think that this campaign is about where we want Ontario heading. And I think that after 7 years of Doug Ford, and I think a lot of Ontarians are absolutely 100% suffering right now. Things are more difficult under Doug Ford 7 years later. And so I think this election will be about, do we want 4 more years of this? Can we afford 4 more years of it? And I will say, you know, with the sort of respite or the pause before the tariffs come potentially, this is an opportunity as well, I think, for us to think about how do we build a stronger province so that we are not vulnerable and weak in the face of a tariff challenge like that. And that means things like, and I know you're going to ask me about these things, but to me that means making sure that our population is strong and taken care of and our industry is resilient.
If you had to choose one issue, and political scientists call it the ballot question, what's going to be on people's minds when they go into the booth and cast their ballot? What's the one issue that you think is top of mind for voters, or should be or will be on February 27th?
I think is my life going to be any better after I vote? And who is going to deliver real change in the province of Ontario? And by that I mean progressive change. I think that is going to be the question for most people at the ballot box come election day.
Okay, we'll circle back to issues in a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
Let me just go back for a moment to what happened this week with Doug Ford and Donald Trump. So the fact that he was rooting for this election denier and tariff promoter, as I call him, and the fact that most Canadians are opposed to Trump and probably supported Kamala Harris, why then is there this disconnect where Doug Ford is so high in the polls, above 40%, and you are somewhere below 20% or plus or minus, and the Liberals are in the low 20s, roughly, according to almost every poll. So why is he so high when Canadians are so anti-Trump?
Well, look, I think for the most part right now, I think people are just tuning in. I think that's the reality. And I've certainly seen that myself in election after election, that increasingly people are especially when things are tough right now, people are not that focused on a campaign. They're focused on just getting by day to day. Am I going to make my rent? Am I going to make my mortgage? How am I going to pay for my groceries? Are my kids getting the support they need in school? These are the things that people are thinking about. And I think increasingly we've seen that people don't tune into elections as much until quite late in the campaign. So as far as I'm concerned, people are just waking up right now to the fact that there is an election. And as I said at the beginning of this, elections matter. What happens in these few weeks matters a lot. And so what I'm going to be doing in these remaining 3 weeks is I'm going to be telling people I am running for Premier in the province of Ontario. And as Premier, I am going to make sure that we have a strong province. I am going to make sure that when you need care, you get the care you need when and where you need it. That's the kind of message I want to deliver, and that's what I'm hoping people will see.
Here's a question that we asked Bonnie Crombie yesterday. She's the Liberal leader.
I've met her. I'm familiar.
I mixed you two up just a moment ago, so it's more for me than you. Who can defeat Doug Ford?
I can, absolutely.
Why?
No question.
The NDP has had 7 years. You were the official opposition. Yeah. I'm not picking on you. This is what I hear at the door. I mean, you say politicians always tell me I hear at the door that they're mad at Doug Ford. I hear a lot from people, super anecdotally, but it does resonate that the opposition didn't excite me.
Well, I mean, okay, I think a couple things. First of all, we are best positioned, without question, to defeat Ford and flip blue seats, conservative seats, to orange. We have more seats than the other parties combined. We are the second most seats compared to Mr. Ford. We have seats in every region, in every corner of this province. We have strong MPPs, and so we already have boots on the ground all across the province of Ontario. So that puts us in a good position from a sort of organizational perspective, certainly. I also think that we have had some big wins, and that we've proven, and I think I've proven over and over again, that we can defeat Doug Ford and push him back on issue after issue. And I'll give a good example, I think, on the Greenbelt. First of all, we were the ones who, along with the media, thank you, to the media for doing your incredible work, but we were the ones who brought forward what happened. We exposed what was taking place and what this dirty deal that he had made to carve up the Greenbelt for these insiders. And not only that, but we pushed back hard every single day, and along with building that movement out there with farmers, with environmentalists, with community members, We defeated him on the Greenbelt, and we've done it again and again and again. We have pushed him back every time.
I'm glad you mentioned the Greenbelt, and you're welcome for our part in that in the media. But the problem with the Greenbelt isn't just that it was a terrible deal. It's that Doug Ford said, I'm sorry, you know where I'm going here, and he bounced right back in the public opinion polls to these stratospheric levels. And you're right that people, I agree with you, I've covered Ontario politics, and people don't tune in this province. It's not like Newfoundland or Alberta. But never before, in recent memory, has a premier had such a massive spread in the polls, except in 1990, I'll give you that, which was a good year for the NDP.
Yes.
But the Greenbelt disaster, the boondoggle, and he bounced right back. How did that happen?
I mean, look, the way I look at it is that's not over yet. I mean, that's a story that continues, and that's one of the other reasons why Doug Ford went to the polls when he did. I mean, I saw the evidence. I really did. I mean, you and I talked about this back last spring. I said, I think he's going to go to the polls really early. And here we are, because I knew he wanted to get out ahead of the RCMP criminal investigation. And, by the way, I was just in Wilmot Township, where they're expropriating 770 acres of prime farmland. They've had everybody and their dog sign NDAs. The farmers, the community members can't find out a thing about it. They don't know what's going on. It's a nightmare. So this continues. And there was another story recently about another, more conservative folks, party staffers and stuff, Doug Ford's key people making backroom deals with developers again and carving up land. This is not over. This continues. And I think people around the pandemic and stuff, were willing to give a lot of political leaders a little room, because that was a difficult time for everyone. But I'm not sure, and I increasingly hear it out there, that people are starting to say, you know what, I don't think we can actually sustain ourselves for 4 more years in this current reality with Doug Ford at the helm.
So you're right, campaigns matter until they don't, but we have to pay attention to them. And I came to your campaign launch last week, and you had some tough things to say about Doug Ford, as one would expect, but you also made a pitch to traditional Liberal Party voters. And you were very hard on Bonnie Crombie, the Liberal leader, and said that she's really just a bit of an imitation of Doug Ford, and that there's not much difference between them. How are they similar?
Well, what I said in the opening pitch to everybody out there was, I said, look, my appeal was to folks who may have voted Liberal in the past. And I said, as you'll recall, I said, I want to ask you to trust me with your vote this time. Because I do believe we need to do that. We're going to have to come together to defeat Doug Ford. And I don't believe, from what I've seen of Bonnie Crombie, the Ontario Liberal leader, is that she criticizes things like she criticized the last Liberal government for spending too much money on healthcare. I mean, she's come out a number of times on issues where I think she's been quite open about it, trying to sound a little bit more like, frankly, Doug Ford. And I don't think that's not my values, and I don't think it's the values of a lot of people who voted Liberal in the past. I think Bonnie Crombie would be more comfortable in a cabinet, as a cabinet member of Doug Ford's maybe, than she will be defeating Doug Ford. And so I think that I think this is what's happening around the world right now, is people are looking for a strong, clear alternative. They want to know exactly what you're going to do. And I am going to fight like hell for every job in every sector of this province, and I am going to rebuild healthcare, and I'm going to make sure that our post-secondary institutions, by the way, I want to make this point to all of you here, that our post-secondary institutions are supported again, because we cannot afford what Doug Ford has done to the province of Ontario.
I promise you we will circle back to post-secondary education funding.
Yeah.
It's near and dear to our hearts.
Absolutely.
So you're very hard on the Liberals, understandably. They can't be trusted in your view. What happens if, by some miracle, you're right and Doug Ford does not win a majority government? It's a minority, let's say, thought experiment. Would you prop him up, or would you work with Bonnie Crombie?
I will absolutely not prop Doug Ford and the Conservatives up. You can bank on that. I'm not supporting him. No way, no how, in no scenario.
So you would work with Bonnie Crombie?
Well, I think in a minority government situation, you work with who you can find common ground with on issues. And the other thing I said, by the way, I want to go back to it for
so
one second.
yes to a Liberal NDP collaboration?
I always say that I will work with, anyone on issues that we share, where we share common values. But I think I have to say that from what I've seen of the Ford Conservatives, I don't trust them, and I don't trust Doug Ford to make decisions that are in the best interest of the people of the province.
So Bonnie Crombie, her number one issue seems to be healthcare. Last two elections, from what I saw, that was your number one issue in 2018 and 2022. She's now put it on her campaign bus. So who's going to own the healthcare issue in this campaign?
Well, I want to say this. She has put it on her. I saw that. She's put it on her campaign bus. But it's more like, here's the problem. I want to talk about the solutions. So here's the thing. I see, a number of issues, but my focus right now is we need to build homes. Not just any homes, permanently affordable, deeply affordable homes in the province of Ontario. We have to fix our schools, and by that I mean also post-secondary institutions. We have to hire doctors, and we have to fix the healthcare crisis, and that will 100% be a big part of our focus, as will the general affordability issues. I brought something that I thought you'd enjoy. So this, I carry this with me.
It's a good thing we're not in the legislature, because the speaker
I
would
would
rule
get
you
in
out of
trouble
order.
for holding
Yes,
this
for having
up.
a prop.
I would
but
have
we're
a
not.
prop, but we're not there.
We're not.
Okay, so I carry this around with me on the campaign, and sometimes I don't know if you've noticed it, put it on my desk in the legislature. I don't hold it up, but I put it there. So this was Tommy Douglas's tie. And I was given this when I first became leader of the opposition, the official opposition, NDP, by former Toronto Mayor David Miller. And he gave it to me. He said, I think you should have this. And I carry it with me because, for those who may not know, Tommy Ford, first NDP leader, premier in Saskatchewan, and the founder, the father of Canadian public health care. And I carry it around with me because I really do, it is absolutely fundamental to me that we are able to protect and rebuild and strengthen our public health care system. It is core to who we are as Canadians. And it is failing right now because this government and previous governments have failed it. And I'm very concerned about the direction we're heading in. And so, as I said earlier, as Premier, I'm going to make sure that every Ontarian gets the care they need when and where they need it. And that is my promise to Ontarians, and it is my pact with Tommy Douglas.
Let's talk about housing for a moment. You mentioned the Greenbelt. Doug Ford, one of the reasons maybe he got mired in the mess of the Greenbelt is he promised to get it done and get 1.5 million homes built in a decade. And he fell behind, and so one thing led to another. I think today you released an update of your housing plan. How are you going to fix it?
Well, we did release back in the fall, I think, or maybe spring, a plan called Homes Ontario, where we're once again going to get the province of Ontario back in the business of actually building permanently affordable homes. And this can mean lots of things: rent geared to income, co-op. And today we talked about the piece of that plan that is supportive housing. And very specifically, we talked about that today because we want to end encampments in the province of Ontario. And right now, you travel around the province. It is shocking. I can tell you, I live in the city of Toronto, but I get to travel everywhere. Every town, every city, every community has an encampment. Homelessness is a pandemic in the province of Ontario. And people every day, more people are losing their home. People who should not lose their homes. I mean, nobody should lose their home. But I mean, I'm talking about people who work their whole lives and they suddenly can't pay rent because rent has gone so high. So they're losing their homes and they're ending up homeless. We have to end that. And a big part of that is going to actually be, guess what? Solving homelessness, you have to build housing. You have to create housing. So building supportive housing where people have the care they need, whether that's addiction support or other supports. And we're going to commit to building a lot of it and fast. And we're also going to protect people who are at risk. So providing emergency funds for people who are at risk of losing their homes because of rent issues.
So I understand that the solution to homelessness is to build more housing and supportive housing. But what's the timeline? Because there's a tendency for progressives to say, you can't just put people in shelters, you have to give them the full wraparound supportive housing. We had this discussion with Mayor Olivia Chow with the Democracy Forum as well.
Right, yeah.
So how long will it take? And what about temporary shelters? Are they not good enough?
No, I mean, absolutely we need temporary shelter. I mean, right now, somebody else died here last night, you know, on the streets of Toronto. Nobody should be dying.
So what are the
in Ontario.
timelines to eliminate the encampments?
Well, we are looking at, first of all, it's one of our core priorities is building those homes. So, and you've seen in the city of Toronto that a lot can happen very quickly when we put our minds to it. So we feel confident that we can really get things moving within the first 100 days and start to actually have places open. I will say this too, Martin, a big piece of this is using land that already is ready to go. So public land that you can identify that's ready to go. As I travel around the province, because I know people are skeptical. They're like, well, look, he couldn't do it. How are you gonna do it? He didn't do it. Where are these homes? Housing starts in Ontario are lower than they have ever been since the 1950s. And this guy ran on a platform last time that he was gonna build homes. He didn't do it. And so we gotta do a lot better and we gotta do it fast. And so I'm committing to that. But we can use public land. I meet with nonprofits all the time, municipalities who have land, locations, plans, ready to go. What they're missing is a provincial partner.
Let's talk about traffic congestion.
Yes.
That's another priority for you. You have made fun of Doug Ford for wanting to build a tunnel under the 401. Fair enough. Your solution is to remove tolls on the Highway 407 toll road. Initially, well, last campaign, the NDP plan was to remove it for trucks, trucking companies. I'm old enough to remember when New Democrats said that companies getting all that free money from the government were corporate welfare bums. But the plan in 2018 for the NDP was no tolls for trucks. Your plan this time is to have no tolls for trucks, and then within 100 days, no tolls for everybody.
right.
A free-for-all,
Yeah.
you might say. The question is, what about the NDP that worries about the environment, that worries about urban sprawl, that worries about too many people on cars, and the NDP that is all for bike lanes to get people
And
out
transit.
of their cars, and transit. So this idea of removing the price signals that would keep people, make people think twice about using the highways all the time, seems like a bit of a right turn for the NDP.
Okay. No. Okay, I'm going to challenge you on that one, Martin. So first of all, I am a transit rider. How many people here rode transit to get here today? Yeah. So I did not. I will say I did not. Not this time because in this election I'm on the road getting to lots of places and I have a bus.
But you were stuck in traffic.
Well, yeah. Well, no, we actually had a pretty good, solid run here. But I will say, so I take transit. I believe in transit. And I am, I would say, not just disappointed, deeply frustrated, like I think most folks in cities in the province are, with the failure of this government to actually move most of the major transit projects through. So first of all, I do want to say this. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Eglinton LRT. Most of you in this room, not everybody, but I would say some of the students here probably were young, like very small children when that started to be built, and it is still not opened.
I was a lot younger when it also.
Yeah, and then you were very, very young, in diapers. But so that, I mean, that thing still is not open. It goes right along the top of my riding, actually, and it is amazing to me that Doug Ford and his government could allow that to continue, could in fact not be able to tell us to this day when that's going to open. So I am making a commitment that we will do that. I'm going to get to
let's go back to the trick question though, which is, what is the cost what is the environmental cost and what is the financial cost of removing those tolls?
So here's the thing. First of all, the way I look at it is this. We have a highway that is sitting there practically empty. And I do think congestion is an issue for a lot of people in this province, especially folks in areas in places like Brampton and where you're stuck in traffic trying to get home to your families, and you may not have the transit options you need, which should be a priority for us, absolutely. But the way I look at it is, so should we be, Doug Ford's focus is more highways, some fantasy tunnel under the 401, instead of actually saying, how do we use the highway we have better? We paid for that highway. Ontarians built that highway, the 407, and then we keep paying for it. So New Democrats never agreed with the selling off of that highway. You know that. And the tolls on it, to me, are one of the reasons why it's just not being used. So if we want to relieve the congestion immediately, then get tough with the company and actually negotiate something so that we can remove the tolls, so that people can, first of all, have a little more money in their pockets, because it is an issue for a lot of people right now, and also we can get people moving and getting home to their families faster. I think, at this point, now Doug Ford is saying, oh yeah, we're gonna look at this and we're gonna look at tolls. He's had 7 years. And before that, we had 15 years under a Liberal government. And then the previous Conservative government was the ones who sold it off. So I don't believe any of them for a second.
I think most people would agree with you, probably most Tories, that selling it off was a crazy idea.
Crazy idea.
But it's now worth a lot more money than it was than what we got
Yeah.
for it in that fire sale.
Yeah.
It's a rental, by the
Yes.
way. It's a lease, not a sale, but
That's
even
true.
so.
That's true.
Even so. Back to my trick question. That's the advantage of having
Yes,
you here.
yes,
Thank
yes.
you for coming, by the way. I love that you're here sitting across from
What
me.
was the trick question again?
What is the cost, environmental and
Okay.
financial, of removing those tolls?
Well, I think the cost environmental is that we're simply going to be, I think it's actually, it's a better choice environmentally than building another highway or extending like a tunnel under the 401 or whatever nonsense that is, because we're actually using something we already have, okay, first of all. Secondly, I think that the cost, and I was asked this by, I think Colin DeMello asked me this morning at a press conference, and he said, what's the cost of that going to be, Marit? What's the price tag? What's it going to cost you? And I said, why would I give away my opening throw to the company? We're going to bargain this. We're going to negotiate. I am not going to tell that company what I'm willing to pay right now. So that's my answer to that question.
So trust you.
But I can also tell you this, it's going to cost a whole lot less than some fantasy tunnel under the 401. And it'll happen immediately instead of in 20 years.
I knew that would be your trick answer to my trick question. So. Okay, so
No trick.
you can't give it away because it's a negotiation, and you're a good negotiator.
That's right.
So
Because I also didn't just work in politics, I was a bargainer and a negotiator for a union for many years.
And I wrote that the other day.
Yes, you did.
So will you tell us then the cost of your other election promises, and when will we see a fully costed platform?
We will have a costed platform, absolutely. Some of the pieces you've already seen, we have actually provided costing. Others, it's an election campaign. We're staging it out, and you're going to see more and more of our platform as we go through the campaign.
When will we see the whole package?
Certainly before Election Day, and
hope so.
I wish I could tell you the whole package, but again, this is a campaign. We're going to kind of slowly bring out certain pieces. Some of it, though, you can look at the things that we've done over the last many years, the legislation that we've introduced, and the policy proposals and solutions, because we're very solution-oriented. Solutions that we've put forward to the Conservative government that they repeatedly reject, unfortunately.
Okay, a reminder to the audience to get your questions ready. I think I've seen a bunch on Slido as well, so I'll turn to that momentarily, but keep your questions rolling. One last trick question. I've covered the NDP for a long time.
Oh, look, my face is out there, Martin.
Very cool. Everybody look, there she is.
Yeah, it was so cool.
Oh.
Oh, that was so cool. All right, sorry. I'm still getting used to this. That was kind of neat.
There's a Doug Ford photo next. So,
Oh, no,
so
oh, no.
There you are.
Okay.
That's the problem. Gotta watch it. You're famous.
I don't know about that, but.
So, question. I've been covering the NDP for a long time, since I was younger, before the Eglinton LRT was started.
Yeah.
And it's a party for the labor movement. It was formed with the labor movement in 1961. Mm-hmm. What is happening to unions and Doug Ford and unions and the NDP? Now, I know you're going to tell me that not all unions are supporting Doug Ford. The steelworkers will be with you no matter what, even if you lower the minimum wage.
Although it is pretty historic that
Even
they're
if you
giving us
lower
a
the minimum,
blanket
even if you lower the minimum wage, the joke goes, the steelworkers would still support you. They're loyalists. But a lot of private sector unions in the building trades, let's be clear, in the building trades are lining up behind Doug Ford. And he's also got the firefighters. It used to be firefighters for McGuinty. Now it's firefighters for Ford. A Unifor local the other day went to Doug Ford. Not all of Unifor. I'm a Unifor member. We're not supporting Doug Ford.
Right, yeah.
But there is something happening with blue-collar workers and Doug Ford. It feels like he's eating your lunch with the lunch bucket crowd. Why is that?
Well, first of all, I don't think that's the case. And I'm out there talking to lots of working people and union members and union leaders all the time. And I don't see that happening, actually. I think that Doug wants that to be he thinks that's his shtick. He's going to be you know, the man of the people, working class guy. I even heard him the
orange
other
vest.
day. The other day he said to a uniform member that I met, he said, you know, I'm a blue collar guy. And I thought, my God, where does he buy his collars? Are you kidding me? I don't buy it, and I don't think a lot of working people do either, because, you know, I look, and some of those unions, like you said, the building trades, you know, they have a history of working closely with government, any government. So, but I think that what I'm hearing from people is that they see through that generally. I think there have been times when they wondered if maybe he was the right guy, but they're seeing through it, because life is just not better after 7 years. And I'll tell you something, you know, of course, as you said, we are the party of labor. We are very, I believe in that. We are the party that came together with farmers and community and unions and labor to form this party. So it means a lot to us. And we are the only party that ever proposes strong labor laws to protect working people.
But that's what makes it all the
Yeah.
more interesting. That Doug Ford is connecting with them at some level. Not everybody, but a lot of them. What's that connection?
I think I'm not. Well, I would challenge that. I don't know that he really is. I think that on the doorsteps, on the ground, I don't think he is connecting. And what I hear from people is stuff like, I was just going to tell you this, you know, I'm meeting with a bunch of auto workers in Windsor, and of course they're terrified right now about what tariffs are going to mean for their jobs. But they also don't want to see him pit one sector against another. And they also remember, you know, I'm talking to some auto workers, and one of them says, you know, my wife is a nurse. And he went after her union. He took nurses to court to suppress their wages, and education workers. I had another uniform member say to me that when he was talking to Doug Ford wanted to talk about he was blue collar guy. He said to him, okay, well, you know what I would like you to do? I would like you to fix our hospitals. And he actually, these are his words, not mine, but he said, our emergency rooms in Windsor are like a slaughterhouse. When are you going to fix that? So I don't think, you know,
I'm not disputing any of that.
Yeah, no,
I'm asking about the paradox, that's all.
Well, I think that's what he wants to convince people of. I think Doug Ford wants to pretend that he's a working person's guy. But you don't see it in his track record.
Okay, you mentioned tariffs just a moment ago. You've said on the campaign trail that you want to tariff-proof Ontario. How do you do that?
A number of things. First of all, we have to build and support our local industry. I love seeing how Ontarians are stepping up and going, you know what, I'm going to buy Ontario. I'm going to support Ontario companies and Canadian companies. And I think that's really important. By the way, Doug Ford and the Conservatives have repeatedly made deals that favored big American corporations over Ontario jobs. We lost a really important contract for the workers up in Thunder Bay, building for the Ontario line. That's jobs, that's opportunities gone. He makes bad deals, he makes dirty deals too. But what was I saying? But I think that thing, but the other piece of it, Martin, which is really important, and of course there's internal trade issues that I think we need to resolve as a country. I think we need to invest in more innovation, for example. But then the other piece of it is we have to start focusing on what makes us strong and unique and ready and resilient when things like that hit. And one of the key pieces to that, and that's why I've been talking about education a lot this week, is education.
So let me just quickly on tariffs. The challenge, it seems to me, for you is that if the economy is buffeted, you and I both know that historically, people gravitate away from the NDP in tough economic times. It's not a winning issue for you. So how do you overcome that obstacle?
I think there's a breaking point for a lot of people, and I think we've hit it. I think a lot of people right now, you know, there were times when I don't think I could have talked about things like rent control. You know, there wouldn't have been an appetite to talk about rent control with a lot of people in the past. But right now, I think everybody recognizes that things are really, really bad. That most people who are renting right now can never imagine owning a home. And that you're often like one rent check away from losing your home altogether. And so I think there's a lot of the reality that has sunk in. The number of people that are turning to food banks, the state of our healthcare system. I think there's a general sense that things cannot be allowed to get worse, and that actually it's in times like this when you need a responsible, progressive government that actually cares about you, who's going to put your jobs in front of their own. I mean, Doug Ford called this election to save only one job, his job.
My job is to ask questions, but I wanted, instead of asking this one, I'm going to let a student ask this question, because I was going to ask you about universities and colleges, as I promised you.
Yes, you did.
But I'm delegating it
Okay.
to Gregory Burkle,
Great.
who asks, your campaign focuses on education, but what are your plans for post-secondary education, like expanding OSAP, tuition freezes, or improving financial aid?
Right. So we'll have more coming up, but I'll tell you this. First of all, Ontario, as I think I already mentioned, is at the bottom. We are dead last in funding for post-secondary institution, universities, and colleges in the country. That is shameful. And with the international student crisis that we saw, we are actually seeing programs cut. I don't know what things are like here at TMU as much, but everywhere I go around the province, colleges and universities are cutting programs. And
TMU had the foresight, if I may say, to not have as many foreign students, so it's not as hard hit, but colleges and universities are in deficit.
Brutal. I was in Belleville the other day talking to some folks at Loyalist College. They have cut a whole number of programs, including a lot of programs that are very important, like food industry programs, really important in that region, the county where that's such a big industry.
So we all know it's a crisis.
Okay.
What are you going to do about it?
So, well, first of all, we are going to reinvest in post-secondary institutions again, to the level that other provinces do, because we have to solve this problem first and foremost. We have to do that. Secondly, I think it's really important we look at, this is not a time, and I've heard some universities and colleges say, maybe it's time to think about raising tuition. And I'm just going to say, I think it is not the time to raise tuition. I think government steps in and starts to fund properly. Families, students are struggling right now already. We do not need to add that burden.
So
but
jump
we
in,
need
I'll let you finish,
to
but jump in on tuitions.
OSAP,
So Doug Ford's first move as premier
Yeah.
in 2018, 2019
Yeah.
was to cut tuition by 10%, and he has frozen it ever since. So that's been 7 years of a freeze.
And without any kind of public funding coming in to make up for that.
So you won't raise tuition, would you make universities whole and colleges to make up the difference?
Yeah, I think that's got to be a part of it, because it is absolutely. We've got to get back to that place where we don't have to make cuts to survive, to keep our programs that we need. And this is about building our economy. This is about the future of Ontario. We can't afford to get this wrong. So that, and then just what I was going to say about students is, eliminating the interest on loans is a piece of it, but we should be replacing loans with grants as well.
Okay, I use my iPad because when I look at the Slido app on my phone, people think I'm distracted. I'm looking at my phone for other stuff. So this way, even though this makes me look older, having an iPad, it sort of differentiates. Jerry Jang, watch out. He's a journalist for the Eye Opener, so be careful.
Okay, all right.
Jerry,
is this Jerry giggling here in front of me?
Should I ask?
Yeah, I guess so.
All right, I'll ask. You plan to spend billions to end encampments, stop 407 tolls, create an income support program, and tariff-proof Ontario. Where's the money coming from?
Well, a few of those things, I will just say, like the income support, we haven't talked about that today, but in the case of a devastating tariff, coming in or being applied in the United States, I think the federal government already made that announcement. Prime Minister said we're going to come forward with some kind of income support program. We would work with them to make sure that Ontarians are getting the support they need. So that's the first thing. I think when we look at where is the money going to come from, we are in a province right now where this government is spending money, I would say like a drunken sailor. I don't know if that's a Newfoundland expression, but they're just spending money right, left, and center on things that we are all paying for that are not actually delivering for Ontarians. So I think there's a lot of room where we can, I think, save actually, like the billions of dollars that is being wasted on the luxury spa down at Ontario Place. Just one example, $2.5 billion of your money that is being wasted on that. There's a lot of room for where we can save some money and redirect it into things that are really going to help people. That's the first thing. But I do think we're at a moment right now where we have to be strategic about where we spend our money. And I think we've seen what happens when a threat comes like this, that we cannot be weak and we cannot allow our people to be vulnerable. We have to care for them. We have to make sure they're protected, and we have to invest now to build our economy and make it stronger for the future.
Just as a nod to the audience, I'm going to read out a few questions that you've already answered, but just to give you a sense that this is on people's minds, okay?
Please.
So an Ipsos poll shows only 19% of Ontarians believe you would be a good provincial leader. Why is that? Next question, Unifor gave their first endorsement to the Conservatives in this election. Does this make you nervous? Here's the question that I do want you to answer because it's an interesting one. When asked about supervised consumption sites, you have more than once declined or omitted to say whether you would reinstate supervised consumption sites. Can you clarify your stance?
So, I mean, I was really disappointed. We were very opposed to the fact that the government pulled those sites when they did. I think there are many different perspectives on the kind of support that works best for people, but the evidence and the government's own experts told them very clearly that people would die if they closed those sites, and they ignored that advice and went ahead anyways. I think that what's disturbing to me, and again, I appreciate that this is, a lot of people are not fans of those sites and have concerns about them. I understand that. But I think when you take away a resource like that, and it is a resource, and you don't replace it with anything else really, you're just leaving people to die. And that's what I think is happening in Ontario. And so, you know, would I have pulled them? I think we certainly would never pull them without replacing them with something that's actually going to work. And right now, I mean, these heart hubs that they're talking about, which I love that model. I mean, lots of some came from community, but you know, what they're proposing is a drop in the bucket. And what I am seeing, and if any of you ever go in Sudbury, there's at the corner, I can't remember the name of the corner, but you go to Sudbury and there's this one corner where people have put crosses out for everybody who's died. It's the tip of the iceberg, right? Because a lot of people don't even know about that. But this is destroying communities. It's destroying families. And addiction is a healthcare issue, and we need to treat it that way. And so I say again, I think this government, I think they will have blood on their hands. Yeah.
Another question from the audience. What is your stance on decriminalizing drugs? Now, arguably a federal responsibility, but any thoughts?
I mean, you know, I think we saw what happened in BC, and it's complicated because decriminalization, well, look, you're right here on the, you know, you see people using in public. It is not pleasant. It does not make people feel safe. So I think we have to come at this with some, again, to me, decriminalization or any kind of attempt to address issues that way is not going to help unless we actually have wraparound support and we have the resources that communities need to address addiction. Addiction is a healthcare issue. It needs to be treated that way.
Here's a question that I often worry about, and so I'll let someone else ask it for me. Why not work with the Liberals and commit to not running candidates in ridings where the other party has a better chance at defeating the progressive conservative candidate?
Yeah.
We all know, before you answer, just to make you feel guilty, we all know that one of the reasons that the Tories are in power now is that the Liberals and New Democrats are tearing each other down.
I mean, that's one way of looking at it. I would say, well, first of all, it's the nature of our political system. Personally, I would like to change the way our political system works. I'd like to see a new electoral system like proportional representation, which would deliver the kind of thing that I think people who are talking about that, and I've had lots of people come up to me about this, are looking for. Because you know what? Actually, it's great when we all have to work together. So I get that. I believe in that. But I think the way our electoral system works right now, it doesn't really provide room for that kind of arrangement before an election. I'll give you an example. You know, I have riding associations where they desperately want to run a New Democrat, because the people there want that choice. They're not happy with Liberals. They don't think Liberals and the Liberal Party represents what they want to see in their elected representative and in their government. And so they want that choice. And, you know, I like that we have choices in our political system. I think it makes us stronger to have lots of different voices. But I hear people on this, and that's why I'm being very upfront with people in this election. You know, the last few elections we've seen, you know, up until the last minute, Liberals look like they had a fighting chance, and they cannot deliver. They go into the elections higher in the polls than we are, and they deliver fewer seats. Their vote is very spread out. Ours is very efficient. I'm now going to sound like a pundit, and my team will not like this. But I'll tell you, the thing is, it's true, right? We're smart about how we approach elections. We know which seats we need to prioritize and try to flip from blue to orange, and that is without question my priority. I want to defeat the Conservative government, and I know that the NDP can. And I think Doug Ford has actually given us a gift. He's given Ontario a gift. He quit, and he's giving us an opportunity to vote for something better. He's giving us the opportunity to use the power of our vote to make real change in the province of Ontario. And I'm really excited about that. And I think Ontario New Democrats are going to be able to present the best offer to those folks.
You're right that you are good at making the most of your votes. But if you got your wish and had proportional representation, then the Liberals would have been in second place in the last election and you would have been third because they had a higher popular vote.
Okay, well, we could have a long debate about this, Martin, but I'll say this. I would say this. Yes, if you can't take a model and just apply it to existing voting patterns or because people will be voting in a different way when they have a different system. They'll be voting with that in mind. For example, they'll be saying, you know what, my vote matters more. I can vote for that candidate over here that I know was never going to have a chance, but I'm going to vote for them anyways because I know there's more of a chance now that I will see someone from that party representing me. So I think it's a totally different system, different way of voting.
With respect, I was listening to your answer while I was listening to the audience,
okay.
but I would have given the same answer. You can't really apply these models. No. So, but I had to ask.
Yeah.
So the Vanessa Tiberio, I hope I pronounced that reasonably well, the 2022 election had the lowest turnout in provincial election history, 44%. Why should Ontarians come out to vote in this election?
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's a major reason why I actually decided to run to be the leader of the official opposition, the NDP leader, because in that 2022 election, that for me was what really stood out, right? It was the low voter turnout, and it just gets lower and lower and lower. And I believe it's because people have kind of given up hope that politicians, that government can do anything to make life better or to change things. I think people have stopped believing in that. And that's really unfortunate because, to be honest, I always say when I go to a high school graduation, for example, and I'm talking to a lot of people who I know are going to be first-time voters coming up, I say, please, not only am I going to say vote, but demand better of us. If we're not speaking about the issues that matter to you, demand it of us, right? And I do think it's on us. It's on us to be speaking to the issues that really connect with people in Ontario right now. And that's why I'm not shying away from talking about things like the cost of living, like congestion and the reality of that for some people in some of our communities. I think we have to go to where people are at, and we have to give them hope to believe that there's actually something possible that can change. It was Jack Layton who said, never let them tell you it can't be done.
We're almost out of time, so let's get a couple of quick questions in with some quick answers. This one you don't have to answer, but I'll just let you hear it anyway. Because you said choice is important in having the NDP and Liberals running against each other. If the priority is to get Ford out, would you strategize with the Liberals and Greens to keep candidates from some ridings to form anyone but Tories coalitions? You've already answered that. Harvey Cooper asks, the ballot question that's framed by Ford is about tariffs. For Crombie, it seems to be healthcare. You mentioned, Marit, making life better. Is that specific enough for Ontarians?
Oh, our offer to Ontarians is this. We're going to build homes. We're going to hire doctors. We're going to fix schools. And we are going to make life more affordable. And I don't think you can talk about any one thing alone in this election because people are feeling it on all fronts. And those, to me, are the major issues that people are dealing with. But I know there's other things as well. And we'll have a full platform for everyone to peruse and see. But I truly believe we have.
What date did you say that would be?
I didn't say a date.
Sorry.
Tricky.
Let me just ask you something, and then I'm going to go to the last question, which has actually got the most votes on Slido, because it's very democratic, depending on what the population is. You won the NDP leadership unopposed. There were no debates. Now, that's a testament to your strong ground game that you were so far ahead. So you can't just apply the model, but you did win without having a real trial by fire until you became leader. And you probably know where I'm going here. You had an MPP, Sarah Jama from Hamilton Centre, I think it is, yes, who gave speeches about the war in Gaza and without looping you in all the time. And so you expelled her from the caucus, and you've rejected her from running again as a candidate, which she tried to do in this election. So my question is, you've got a very divided riding executive in Hamilton Centre, which I've never seen before, where they're saying, as executive members, they're not going to vote for the NDP candidate, they're going to vote for her as an independent. How have you been able, as leader, to deal with that? What did you learn from that? What did you learn about the party? And is the party united, again, in trying to focus on a democratic election campaign and provincial issues that probably matter most to most Ontarians, or is the party still distracted by Sarah Gemma? And in fairness, I'll read the question from this person, anonymous. How do you feel about Sarah Gemma's statement that the ONDP has stripped the people of Hamilton Centre of their fundamental right to a democratic process?
Well, okay, so first of all, to that question, I would say, look, our provincial director who vets every single candidate application that comes in, and all candidates go through the same process. And the provincial director made that call, and I trust his decision. What have I learned?
Why was she rejected?
Well, you can't, those are all confidential, right? I mean, that happens, though, and it's not the only, I will say honestly, it's not the only person whose candidate application was denied, because that happens in every party all the time. I hear about a lot of issues as I'm traveling around the province. I'm proud of the position that we in our federal party, we take our guidance on these issues from the federal party, and I'm proud of the strong stance we've taken on human rights and justice in Palestine. And I believe very strongly in that. I have learned a lot as a leader about what it takes to, maintain a strong team in the face of very divisive issues. I think what I'm hearing from people as I cross the province is that Ontarians, there are lots of issues that people are deeply concerned about, and they affect people differently. But that we are united in certain values, and many people are looking for the change that we represent, which is change that will actually deliver a government that's on the side of regular people. So I feel good about it, and I feel like we're, in many ways, I'm seeing more excitement, and I'm seeing momentum building in our campaigns. So everywhere I go, there's bigger and bigger turnout and crowds, and it's been very exciting. And I feel like people are coming together around that vision, which is wonderful and very exciting.
Okay. We have a lot more questions about why the Liberals and you Democrats don't get their act together, but we are out of time, so you're lucky. I do have one more quick question to ask you, though, and that is, do you have advice for students who might in the room about how to get involved in politics, how you got involved in politics, and why it's important to get involved in politics or in civil society?
Well, obviously there's lots of ways to be active in your communities and in making change. And so I've done lots of different things, like helping out in community organizations or a cause, or getting active with petitions and things like that. But political parties are definitely one of the ways that you can make change. And so I would suggest, first of all, this is the moment. There's campaigns happening all over this city. Right here in Kristen Wong-Tam's riding, you have an amazing candidate, an amazing campaign underway. And I would suggest getting out there and actually volunteering, because there is, and the first time I ever got involved in formal politics, I was very involved in anti-apartheid movement and stuff like that in university. But the first time I ever went out and knocked on—
South African apartheid.
Yes, South African apartheid. The first time I ever got really active and knocked on doors was in the 1990 campaign. So some of you will have to look this up, but I feel like a lot of you will know about it. The 1990 campaign, and I was going to Carleton. I was in Ottawa Centre riding, knocked on the doors for Evelyn Gigantes. She won. We formed government for the first time in Ontario. And I thought, that's all it takes? Awesome. Let's keep doing this. But actually, the funny thing is, I do think that I really do. I never, when I was that age and younger, I just didn't really feel comfortable on the doorstep. I was shy about it. I felt weird coming in, knocking on people's doors in the middle of dinner or something. But there is nothing like it. You learn so much about people. You learn about your community. You learn about your neighbors. You have the most amazing conversations. It is fantastic, and I highly recommend anybody who's got an interest in change of any kind, tries that out. So that would be my number one suggestion. Also, the guy that I was on a date with that time, and we had just started going out, is still my partner today. He's here, actually. And so there is romance in politics as well. So another good reason to get active.
There's a pattern here because Bonnie Crombie told us the same thing yesterday.
Oh, no kidding, really?
One of her
That's
first,
funny.
one of
I
her
didn't know
first
that.
dates, and my ex-girlfriend went to work for Evelyn Gigantes, which
yes.
is not why we broke up, but there you have it. That's the history. Okay, we're out of time. Remember that Election Day is on February 27th, which is just 22 days away. Please don't forget to vote, because a vote is a terrible thing to waste, no matter who you vote for. I want to thank our guest, NDP leader Marit Stiles, for coming today. Safe travels on the campaign trail, and thanks to everyone in the audience for being so democratic today. A reminder that next Tuesday at noon, we'll be joined by Green Party leader Mike Schreiner from Guelph. And for something completely different, the winner of that 1990 election, Bob Ray, will be a guest in person here at TMU on Friday at noon. He is now our ambassador to the United Nations. Special thanks to everyone from the Deus team, and Kareem, over to you for a closer.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Martin, for running this series and bringing these conversations to this audience and to the larger audiences through our friends at the Toronto Star and CPAC. And thank you to Brian, to DJ from TMU Media, DJ and his team from TMU Security, as well as all of the Daisies, led by Catherine Ambergi. I see Tiffany Kwok, Angus Lockhart, Mariana Rodriguez, who's our photographer, Tanya Coyle, Zainab Chowdhury, Famida Kamali, Viet Vu, Andre Cote, and others who put this on. Thank you, Marit. Welcome, always welcome to the dais, and please join us at next TMU Democracy Forum. Thank you.